and it happens with COVID, and it's happening now, and it's been happening for a year, right? Dr. Andy?
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So I don't know if you heard my question there, but we have a COVID virus. It's been dangerous to some people, but they are blowing it all out of proportion so they can move other parts of their agenda. I'm going to ask you sort of a political question on that with your medical background, but this thing, I mean, if you would look at the last 14 months.
Right. That's the inescapable conclusion.
Right.
I mean, why is it comes right down to that abhorrent press conference that just took place today on our weekly update.
I mean, there were so many inconsistencies there.
Well,
give us an overview.
It's a toxic brew of ignorance, sprinkle in some duplicity. When you have a chief public health officer like Dr. Scott, who apparently doesn't know that SARS-CoV-2 is an RNA virus, it's a little disturbing at this point. So,
what do you mean she doesn't know it's an RNA virus?
That's right. That's right. She's discussing the variants and talking about how they're doing these genomic analyses of the DNA. Well, the virus doesn't have DNA; it has RNA. And when you say something like that, from her position of supposed enlightenment and authority, it's certainly to me as who's at least her peer, I find it very disconcerting.
I heard her fear-mongering
what we discussed last week too, Mike.
Yeah, I heard her today. Oh, sorry, Andy.
I understand they seem to have a great reverence for Dr. Jha too, and he's drumming up the panic pornography about the variants. Doesn't mention any of the data. That's actually very reassuring. And it's mirrored from the top down. I saw a very interesting clip. Once again, God bless him, Rand Paul was confronting Fauci today. And Fauci has no rational, evidence-based answers either. So if that's the pinnacle, that's the oracle of COVID knowledge in this country. And it just filters down to these, functionaries at lower levels in state departments of health. It's a big problem. It takes Republican governors with strength like DeSantis to unlock their societies.
You mean like this, Dr. Fauci?
Yeah. I mean, it's everything. I mean, first of all, he actually has an interesting strategy. I don't know if it's a planned strategy. He literally has two positions diametrically opposed on virtually every major issue over the last year.
Well, that's what that cartoon catches. If you want to be inconsistent, ask me.
Yeah. I mean, it just, but it's serious though, Mike. I mean, you have to make some jest about these.
Yeah, and I also heard our health director basically mislead on herd immunity. 30%. He's way above 30%.
Well, okay, so yeah, but that look, that's an issue for discussion, and you're right. I'd like to tease that out a little bit, but what was more disconcerting to me, and I don't know whether this guy is, frankly, we're being candid here, whether he's a little slow or what it is with this new governor. But is he really talking about vaccinating 70% of the population of Rhode Island?
But it sounds
that's insane. That's just flat out insane. Mike, we are operating. I was very glad to hear a lawyer discuss this yesterday on WPRO. We are operating under emergency use authorization. None of these vaccines that we've been discussing is approved by the FDA. That is at minimum about a 2-year process. And even if you're going to say, well, but aren't we into it? There have been some randomized controlled trials. We're at best about 6 months into a 2-year process for confirming efficacy, and more importantly, with the extended follow-up, confirming safety. You can't. When you look at the emergency use fact sheets that the FDA puts out for these vaccines, it's very clear on it. It has to be voluntary. It's absolutely clear. So are you going to start mandating that kids at, I don't know, URI and kids in K through 12 have to get vaccinated in the fall? First of all, again, Mike, think of the timetable. We're not going to be
a false narrative, right? It's part
no,
of
no, but we're not going to be outside that window of the emergency use authorization. We're not going to have formal FDA approval if they really stick to about a 2-year cycle. So, there's a lot of issues with a governor making a statement that he wants 70%. Now, if he's talking about something where we're already close, we're actually at or above 70% of those 65 plus. Okay, and at this point, it sounds like it's been all voluntary.
Well, and again,
he's not talking about a targeted vaccination strategy, apparently.
Right. But from day one, this has been the issue, right? Would you agree with me on this? And I wasn't sure I was right a year ago when I was saying this, but I know I'm right now. Tell me if I think I'm right now.
Yeah.
But the concern always should have been who's getting really sick and how many people are dying.
Absolutely.
Not how many people are getting some level of infection, right? I mean, people
right.
get the flu. We didn't care about that.
Right. Well, and mercifully, Mike, this is actually turning out, we have enough evidence now to be a much more focused disease in many respects than influenza.
Yeah.
Influenza, depending on years and strains, has had a much more broad spectrum of activity. And particularly, it can wreak havoc that we just haven't seen in the pediatric population. That's just not happening. It's really shown itself to be overwhelmingly, certainly in a state like Rhode Island, which has a large elderly cohort, to be a disease of the elderly, particularly the institutionalized elderly. We really haven't moved very much from the totals being, in the 60% to 2/3 range of the nursing home and assisted living population in terms of total of COVID mortality.
All right, let's go through our weekly Rhode Island numbers here and charts that you send over to us. Thank you for that again. So here is the positivity rate.
So we're holding at 2%. I mean, look at that. We're holding at 2%. And again, Mike, this is something for some reason that caused Dr. Scott concern, or if I have to take her at face value that she's sincere to be concerned about this. And I don't know. I mean, are we looking to eradicate this? It's not going to happen, Mike.
Yeah, you can't stop the spread. We got to stop.
But it's down to 2%.
Right? That's my point. Yeah.
And as we've shown, Mike, again, because they don't like to be transparent, they have the data somewhere. Let's look at what the cycle threshold distribution is in that 2% that we're now hovering at for the last month.
Yeah. How many of them are severe cases? Right. Exactly. All right. What do we got here? Hospitalizations.
Look, I mean, this is a very nice picture.
This is the one that matters, right? Probably more.
Absolutely. This and the deaths. This is what matters, and that's what we should continue to look at. And it's coming down. And I have a similar figure for deaths. I mean, there's actually, I was able to show it this time. There's actually been days of 0 deaths recently.
Yeah.
So this is all good news. And her. Dr. Scott's perseveration on the variance is really what
was that word? What was that word?
Variance, yeah.
Perseveration?
Yes.
What the hell is that?
Her obsession with
perseveration. That's a new one.
Yeah. Well, the same thing with Dr. Jha. I mean, Mike, I'd give them a pass if they kind of said it's something we have to, be cognizant of, be aware of. But no, it's not framed that way. And they don't give the reassuring news. What is the reassuring news? Well, there are websites that I go to run by virologists and infectious disease epidemiologists. And I don't know why these folks aren't aware of them, but apparently they aren't, or they just ignore them, which literally trace as the infections convert to these variants. It's a very hot topic. And you can see for neighboring Massachusetts, Mike.
Is this it right here? This is what you sent me?
Yeah, was this the one from? Yeah, this is Massachusetts. Absolutely. So you can see Massachusetts is now consistently above 30% for the so-called UK variant, the B117 variant. and look at its metrics.
All right, so wait a minute. So let me say, so of all the cases diagnosed, 30% now and increasing rapidly are the UK variant, right?
Right. Now, these aren't, no, what this is telling you is the percentage of them. The cases in terms of going down, you have to look at the overall picture.
But at the same time, look at this, right? Bingo.
Yeah. So as every important metric is improving, as cases that are going down, percent positivity is going down, hospitalizations going down, deaths going down, the percentage of the pool of those getting infected with the variant is increasing. So what is the logical inference to that? I mean, I just, it's really, it's very difficult to jibe with what's going on.
And here they go again for the last few weeks. Oh, watch out for these evil foreign variants. Well, they're coming and they're doing nothing. But yet again, we heard it today from the Department of Health. Alexander Scott trying to put fearmonger about the British variant. And here we are, front page of the Providence Journal today. There's another European variant.
Look, there are individual countries. They're having their own issues, but I can tell you, we were supposed to watch out for the UK variant. That story is very clear. Look at Florida, look at Texas, look at Georgia. In the range of 40 to 50%. Florida is now over 50% of the UK variant, and all the metrics are improving. In Europe, parts of Europe. I mean, Europe has a diversity of cultures. In the UK, the home of the UK variant, a precipitous drop in all these metrics. In Denmark and Switzerland, same thing. So, again, if there are parts of Europe that are having problems, okay, we should be aware of that. But why are we never told this vast corpus of reassuring evidence, Mike? This has been from the beginning, and it persists to this day. And it's just you at a certain point you have to say that there's something wrong with these public health officials. Why are they doing this to people? Is it Mike? Is it simply a ghoulishness? Remember, kids that like to scare each other in the closet. It's just unacceptable.
The fear, it's what you said earlier. The fear, they create the fear. It justifies the governors maintaining their emergency powers status.
Yeah, well,
so they are twisting the data so they can maintain their dictatorial powers.
And I think some of it, I'm sorry, Mike, but I think some of it is just sheer stupidity, because we have examples of other governors who get the same, they're constant and they're attacked and they're getting bombarded with the same fear mongering, and yet they're saying, well, wait a minute, there's also other evidence that I have to weigh, and this is how I'm going to forge my path forward. Yeah. And in fact, they seem to be doing better. So we are third in coronavirus mortality per capita, and Florida is 27th. And
they're wide open.
Exactly, and there are other examples, and there are other states. And if you look at the impact of strict lockdown versus less severe lockdown versus virtually no lockdown, there's no benefit to it. It's well known now. It's well established now. We even talked about Sweden, Mike. We've talked about Sweden, where they can bear.
Let's take it to masks next. Let's take it to masks, right? So here's another chart you sent me.
Oh, this is very interesting, Mike. This is from a hearing in Alachua County in Florida, where I have a friend and colleague who's an old-fashioned reporter, a Princeton graduate and an evangelical Christian. Can you imagine? Can you imagine such things even happen in this world anymore? And she's a wonderful reporter, and she and others put this together on looking at the use of masks in schools specifically, and all I can tell you is in counties in Florida, and it's the green. It's those that show up as green, where they're not using masks, versus those that show up in red, where there's pretty strict use of masks, particularly in school. And there's no discernible advantage to being in a strict mask in school
Oh,
protocol
it looks
county.
to me like the mask wearing counties have higher incident cases.
Might be worse, and the cases have to be adjusted per capita, because if you look at the big red, it's I think it's
Well, it is.
Dade,
It's per 100. No, it's per 100,000. It is per
right,
capita.
but and then you could make the argument, well, some of the green counties are more rural, et cetera. You could make that argument, but the point is they're looking specifically at the issue of mandating children, which I think is abusive, wearing masks in school, and they're not seeing any benefit to it, certainly.
All right, let's go back to vaccines. There's still, they talked about it quite a bit today nationally. The left is trying to get Trump and all the former presidents do a public service amount. Go get the vaccine, no matter who you are. States are opening up. Rhode Island's going to open it up in a week or two to everybody over 16. Massachusetts is doing it. Again, we've got more vaccines out. Again, just to be clear, you said it before in this show, but not everybody, saw the prior shows. Just what is your guidance on vaccines? Any concerns or any positives you like about the whole situation?
Right.
Just talk about it.
Well, so my most fundamental concern with all of them, and I have more concerns with the adenovirus vector vaccines, as we've talked about, than the mRNA vaccines, and I can summarize that briefly. But my generic concern with all of them is that they are experimental. That's not fear mongering. That's just the truth. They were granted emergency use authorizations. Emergency use authorizations actually preclude any sort of federal mandate that they be applied. You can look literally at the guidelines that are given to both caregivers and patients on the EUA vaccines, and it says it's volitional. You have to agree to it. It's like an informed consent kind of document. That it's going to take another, I would say, 18 months or so before the FDA does their full reviews, which is what it's different than an emergency use.
So we're pretty comfortable that there's no near-term major problems, but there's no way to know long-term impacts.
And we also have to see where they've been tested and given. I mean, the trial certainly did not include any significant numbers of pregnant women or younger people. So we just don't know anything.
But on the other hand, you're not fear mongering and saying there will be long-term problems, right?
No, we just don't know. And that's why people have to weigh for themselves, whether they want to be vaccinated. And I think that decision comes down to something that's more concrete. If you're a high risk person, then I think the pendulum swings in favor of getting vaccinated. If you're at high risk for complications from COVID, and those things are fairly well known now, certainly older age, obesity, diabetes, particularly if it's uncontrolled obesity, uncontrolled, diabetes, and immunocompromise. I mean, those are the basic, risk factors. And that's, so some of those risk factors are kind of age specific.
And elderly, right?
Yeah, age is the major one. But I think, a person, a younger person who has something like cystic fibrosis might want to weigh considering getting the vaccine versus their risk of getting infected with coronavirus. But an otherwise healthy person, I mean, the pendulum would swing the other way.
A month ago or so, or over the last couple of months, you basically said for a younger, healthier person, it's probably a coin flip whether you want to take the disease vaccine.
Well, if I said that, Mike, I've said I would say now I would avoid it until there's more data available, because you're at such low risk.
You would.
I don't see why and you shouldn't be in a situation where your university, your college mandates it. I think a Rhode Island lawyer, again, was on the air yesterday saying he'd love to take cases like that, because you can't force a person under an EUA to take a vaccine at a federally funded institution. You just can't do that.
And again, there's 3 options available for us in Rhode Island: the Johnson & Johnson, the Moderna, and the Pfizer. Again,
I have a definite preference at this point, both in terms of data availability and
what's the data showing, and what is your preference?
Yeah, so I think just there's more data available for the two mRNA vaccines now. Remember, practically the entire country of Israel is vaccinating with it.
That's the Pfizer and Moderna.
That's Pfizer and Moderna. It's also the mechanism. It's the way it delivers the message, the messenger RNA in this case, for production of the spike protein. You know, again, Mike, think of the constant pictures of the coronavirus with those little spike formations coming out of it. That's the protein on the surface that the vaccines are stimulating the person to generate, to then in turn stimulate an immune response. The way the mRNA vaccines do that is by creating a synthetic messenger RNA, which is just a string of what are called nucleotides with tails on it. It goes to a very specific location ultimately where it does its thing. It's called the ribosome. It's outside the nucleus of the cell. So it does not interact with the genome. Within hours to days, the message is degraded. That's what we understand.
It sends the message and then it gets destroyed, right?
Contrast that with the adenovirus vector vaccines. Certainly the adenovirus 26 vector that's used for the Johnson & Johnson, the Janssen vaccine, that is an adenovirus. Okay, it's an adenovirus that's been engineered in a way to prevent it from being able to reproduce and giving you an adenovirus infection that just keeps reproducing. It gains entry to your cells and does ultimately make its way to the nucleus, where it inserts the gene for creating the messenger RNA, and then leading to the synthesis of that same spike protein. So in the end product is the same, but the way it goes about doing that is different, and it means it is interacting with your own genetic code, and that may turn out to be perfectly innocuous and very circumscribed, very limited. That's all it does, but it opens up at least theoretical possibilities for other things happening, and we just don't know enough about it. And in fact, the only adenovirus vaccine that's out there is for rabies, but it's for rabies in animals, not human beings. It's
So what's the data show? Is there any significant data early on yet?
No, I would say none of these yet are giving an extraordinary symbol. Although what's pretty clear from the open record, the so-called vaccine adverse event reporting system, which is totally open, it's uncontrolled. It does seem that there are more complications, whether they're allergic reactions, reported more serious things like deaths and hospitalizations at a higher level than we would typically see with flu vaccination, for example. But it's such uncontrolled data, Mike. Literally anyone can write into it, that you don't know exactly what you're dealing with. Is it another spectrum of the hysteria that we're apparently living under right now? Is it over-reporting of some of these things? They're all undocumented. They have some supportive evidence, but it's uncontrolled.
When we do see some controlled evidence, we know you'll bring it to us. And you said the key word there, which I'll talk about in a moment. Dr. Bostom, thank you again for joining us.
Sure, Mike.
And thanks for informing the world. I know you're on many mediums now, and that's great. Keep getting the word out, and it's important we have multiple.
Yeah, but this is the most important medium.
Yes, it is. Yes,
this is where we have the most substantive conversations.